morning and welcome to today's Tax Mchuzi. Thank you for joining us, our viewers and taxpayers. It's always a pleasure to have you, and hopefully your day is amazing, and I hope that it goes well. And for today's Tax Mchuzi episode, we are looking at tax penalty waiver opportunity. Is it possible? Yeah, you may be wondering, does URA give waivers for tax penalties? How is it done, and how can one go about it? Today in the house we have an expert who will explain and break down all these notions and also explain a few more things that you need to do in order to have this waiver opportunity in case you have a tax penalty that you cannot afford to pay, or you feel like it is something that can be waived off of your tax records. Thank you so much, Tony, for joining us. Please introduce yourself and say hello to our viewers.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for the opportunity. My name is Tony Kalunji. I am an officer in the Legal Services and Border Affairs Department of Uganda Revenue Authority. It is a pleasure to be here, and I'm happy to be the person to present this topic.
Tony, thank you for joining us. Today, I'm your host, and my name is Elizabeth Nakiru. I forgot to introduce myself a bit. And I think, Tony, it's important that we just dive in and people get to know that, yes, you may have a tax penalty, but at what point do you come to URA and say, you know what, I have this tax penalty, can I be able to get it off my records, and how do I go about it? So, is it possible to have a tax penalty to be waived? Yeah? And if it is possible, how can someone go about it?
Yeah. Thank you for that, Elizabeth. Yeah, it is possible to have your tax penalty waived. Yeah. And generally there are three ways it can happen. The first one is by operation of law. You could be seated there and Parliament passes an act that will have waived interest and penalty. For instance, if you look at our Tax Procedure Code Act, Section 40A, as of 30th June 2019, they waived all tax. 40C also tell you that as of 30th June 2020, all penalty that was outstanding and interest was waived as of that date. Then we also have another point where the minister, under the remission powers, after receiving guidance from the Commissioner General, can consider, and the effect of that is that tax, which includes penalty, can be waived. Now the final one, which is also important for today's presentation, is whereby the Commissioner General has the powers, if you as a taxpayer voluntarily disclose, that will be the time that we'll be considering today. If you make that voluntary disclosure, he has the powers to allow or consider you and decide to waive the penalty and interest of your principal.
Thank you, Tony. Like you indicated, the voluntary disclosure program, what is it?
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Briefly, the voluntary disclosure program was a program put into place by the law to enable taxpayers who are compliant, who without any recourse from URA can come up and they get a reward for disclosing. But briefly, what it means is whereby you as a taxpayer, on your own volition, without URA coming to you, without an informal whistleblowing, you decide and you come to URA and you tell it that this and my non-compliance issues, these are the offenses I've committed, and by doing so you only pay the principal tax that will arise, and your penalty and interest is waived.
Someone may be wondering, why should I come and tell you my problems? And also maybe a taxpayer could have a business that is collapsing, and that is the time they need that kind of advice. So who is entitled to this program?
Thank you for that, Elizabeth.
Yes.
The law does not discriminate. Any taxpayer is entitled to apply for voluntary disclosure. Individual company, you can apply. But the key, and it benefits those who have non-compliance issues, provided URA has not started auditing you or there is no informer, and you come up. But generally, any taxpayer, there is no discrimination on the type.
Okay, speaking of any taxpayer, what are the requirements for joining this program?
Thank you for that. The requirements are spelled out in the law, but briefly, in the word itself, voluntary disclosure, you must act before You must act before URA gets in the know.
Okay.
Now the requirement is you inform URA before it gets in the know that these are my non-compliance issues. You fill in the form that you download from the URA portal.
Okay.
You pay the principal tax that accrues, and then you request that the penalty and interest be waived.
Oh, that sounds quite simple. For me, my takeaway is that first of all, you need to be willing and come with your records and show to URA. Secondly, there's a form you're supposed to fill here at the portal. And then once you fill the form, you bring it back and pay the principal tax. So is it possible to fill in this form before paying, or it's only after paying that you come?
Now, the form, the way it is designed, the general approach or the best approach is to download the form, make the disclosure, and pay the principal. Because as I will explain, when you download the form, there is a part where you're required to attach or indicate the PRN, the payment receipt number that you have paid the taxes on, and you indicate. But in any event, if I told you do that, which is not advisable, you can later on attach it later to make the payment of the principal.
Okay, so are there timelines for voluntarily disclosing, or it's an open program and you don't need to put someone on pressure and it's okay anytime?
Thank you for that. There are no timelines for making a voluntary disclosure, or what I will call a VD, for not being a mouthful. So you can make your VD anytime, but the catchphrase is make sure URA is not in the know.
Okay.
So you can do it 10 years, 20 years before, or you can do it 1 week or in 1 day of non-compliance, but the test is by the time you make it, is URA in the know or not? If it is in the know, then the timelines, you're fallen out of the timelines required.
Okay, so as a taxpayer may be wondering, can I, like you've mentioned somewhere that this is done by downloading a form from the web portal of your area. So is there a manual way of doing it if someone cannot do it online? Is there a physical form? Is there a manual way of doing it without necessarily going to the portal?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, I believe the best approach and what is advisable to help you is to download the form that is online.
Okay.
But still, even if you cannot, you can write a letter to the Commissioner General and you put there the subject as your request to have your penalty and interest waived under the VD program, and you can attach your evidence, and then you'll be assisted. That is it. But still, for the best approach, it would advise most taxpayers to follow the online platform. Reason being that you can do it anywhere in your comfort and just download the form and fill it in easily.
Okay, so you mentioned somewhere something to do with attaching evidence, yeah? And I believe also online this is done, like you have to attach the evidence. Other than your business records and the fact that URA has not yet found you, what other documents does someone need to attach?
Thank you. It would generally depend on your case, but one of the tests of a VD is that it must be full and complete.
Okay.
So you attach everything under the sun to make sure you fulfill that test. But key and the particulars that you must indicate your name as the taxpayer, the tax period in issue, the tax head. You indicate the PRN to prove that you have paid the principal tax in issue. You indicate the offense you have committed, if at all it's an offense, or you indicate your area of non-compliance. But also to make sure, to give comfort to the taxpayer, is that you need not give your reason of non-compliance. You need not say, I forgot or I was a fraud. You can just say, for the month of June 2021, I did not pay tax amounting to 3 million. That is an example. And you need not explain why you did it. You say the reason why. I said you can attach your proof of, because of my sales, this is the receipt I made. Yeah, so basically that.
Okay. So is there a limit to how far back a client or a taxpayer can come in and say, you know what, it's been 10 years or 7 years or 5 years, these are my problems of non-compliance? Is there a timeline far back?
Thank you for that. That's an interesting question. The law provides no timeline. You can make it as far as since BC or Jesus came,
Okay.
but maybe to be practical, since what you're aiming at getting is waiver of interest and penalty, if the law really, like I explained from the beginning, let's say by June 30th, 2020, because of COVID, it had waived interest and penalty.
Okay.
You may indicate any period you want, but you will know the effect is that some of it will be taken care of.
Okay.
So there is no limit to the law.
So you can quote like 10 years prior and say, please, this is my tax liability.
URA will not refuse a VD because it is too old. Whereas in other procedures that come up, for instance, if you're objecting, if you're going to the tax appeals tribunal, you're filing a return, there are timelines within which to do so. The VD program is open. You can make any disclosure that you deem fit.
Okay, so how can a taxpayer get to know that their voluntary disclosure has been accepted or objected to by URA? Or is there even such a thing, or you accept everything?
Now, thank you for that. When URA receives the VD form, it verifies the information you've provided, and its tests are that the VD you've made has happened before the information got to URA, then it has been complete, you've paid the principal tax, and you confirm to non-compliance. Now, when it does that and it is satisfied, the Commissioner General gives the taxpayer what we call a VD certificate, a voluntary disclosure certificate, or a letter. And the letter will be saying that following your VD that was made on this date, it will indicate your name, the period, and the tax in issue, and it will indicate that the effect is that the penalty and interest has been waived. That is what the taxpayer gets response to their VD application.
Okay. So we've been talking about the voluntary disclosure for a few minutes now, and the taxpayer may not have non-compliance issues, but let's say, for example, I'm a business person, and then URA comes and assesses me and tells me this is how much you're supposed to pay, and maybe I was delayed by 1 or 2 days, and then I get this assessment, this interest, this penalty. Can I still come back and say, no, this is what you've assessed me, it's not correct, and this is the correct one?
Thank you for that. There is a remedy for that, just that the path or the way you will choose will not be voluntary disclosure. Now, for that, we'll advise objecting, and you would give reasons. Or we will also advise applications for extension of time within which to do the correct thing or file the proper return. There's even a remedy of amending your return to reflect the true position. You still get the same result that you wish to get. And the reason why VD may not allow that is that URA has already communicated to you the assessment. However, and this is the distinction, if URA gives you an assessment and that assessment is specific for the period, it says this administrative additional assessment is for the period, for instance, February 2020. You can, under the VD program, disclose a liability for another period, and that will still be considered. Or you can disclose a liability for the same period but under a different tax matter. For instance, if the assessment is in respect of, let's say, value added tax, for the same period you can indicate for income tax purposes or excise duty or maybe rental or withholding, provide this is my VD. So if you pass the tests of another tax in issue or another period, you can still make the VD. Just because you have received an assessment, don't take it that now URA knows all my tax affairs. No, you can analyze the assessment and you're like, no, wait, this assessment is for rental, but I still do other things like business, and for that I disclose under this program.
Okay, so a taxpayer may be out there wondering, why should I do this thing? What is the importance, or what is the benefit? What is in it for the taxpayer? I mean, it feels like it's URA benefiting because they have to pay their principal tax before you even come and claim anything. So are there benefits to this program to the client or taxpayers?
Thanks a lot. The benefits to the taxpayer are enormous. Those who are in business, the business perspective is that if URA comes and audits you, they give you their assessment for that period and they deem it as if you ought to have paid the tax for that period. So because of that, interest and penalty accrues and it can be hefty. But if you come under the VD program, you are going to get a breather. You're only going to pay the principal. So from a business perspective, the penalty and interest, you won't pay it.
Okay.
Yeah, then secondly, some of the non-compliance issues border on prosecution. There are criminal sanctions for it. You can be taken to anti-corruption court and you're charged with some offenses such as providing false and misleading information. And because of that, under the voluntary disclosure, you're saved from that. So because of VD, you're saved from any possible voluntary disclosure. Then also thirdly, it gives you a communication gap with URA, and you'll be surprised how they can assist you to put your affairs in record. But if you wait and URA comes, you may not get these benefits of being asked to maybe amend and so on.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tony. Now that we've spoken about the importance and the benefits of this program, are there any consequences of non-disclosure to the taxpayer under this program?
Okay, yes. Thank you. The consequences of non-disclosure would be the reverse of what I had just said, but maybe amplified. If you do not disclose and URA comes, first the tax that URA is going to assess you, URA is allowed to use the best information available to it and or use third-party information and assess you tax. Now in the process of that assessment, it is possible and justifiably so that the tax that URA might assess you will be higher because we are basing on third-party information without involving you. We are basing on maybe our analysis of best information of your records without getting your explanations. So the consequence is that your tax is likely to be high if you don't voluntarily disclose. Now also, you will not get a breather of penalty and interest that will be waived. You will be taken as if that tax you ought to have paid it and you're a defaulter. Then also we have issues of where you will seek benefits from URA such as tax clearing certificates, and they may deny you your applications until you comply and put your affairs in record. Then we also have the other people who come in with a stick whereby you will be there, a file will be opened, you will be taken to anti-corruption court, and you will be prosecuted for offenses under the tax laws. So if you do not come to URA and you voluntarily disclose, you miss out, so you will be taken for prosecution. If at all there are offenses there, and after we have investigated, you might pay a tax that is higher because we have used information based on our knowledge and third-party information or an informer, or you're likely to pay the interest and penalty because it is also part of tax and you ought to have paid a particular tax at a specific date, but because of your non-disclosing and us coming to you before you do that, you have to pay the principal and penalty. So that's what happens if you don't voluntarily disclose.
Yes, I hope our taxpayers have taken note of that. So someone may be out there and asking themselves, okay, you've told us all these beautiful things about this program. Are there any, is there an office that someone can walk into URA and come in and say, I have come to the voluntary disclosure office? Or it's mainly everything is done just online?
Well, for the information of our taxpayers, in the domestic taxes department, there is a business policy unit. They sit on the 4th floor of the URA tower. Those are the people with the mandate. But even if you're outside the URA tower, you can download the form and just submit it at any office, and then they will remit it. So that is for the domestic taxes bit.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tony. That was quite an elaborate breakdown of the voluntary disclosure program, and I hope that our taxpayers have got some takeaways from this and they'll be able to disclose and also take part of the benefits of the voluntary disclosure program. Tony, any parting shots before we let go of our viewers?
Okay, thank you for that. We would encourage our taxpayers to comply with the laws by filing their returns on the due dates. And when you comply, you save yourself from having to engage in two activities that will take up your time, but still take benefit of the programs that are existing, such as voluntary disclosure. It will save you time, there are benefits, but don't wait until you've hit the canvas for you to come up and you begin begging or crying. Either way, comply and pay your taxes.
Thank you so much, Tony. That was quite a recap, and that was quite an interesting parting shot there. Do not wait to be caught for you to come out and say, okay, now I'm disclosing. It won't work, and that is not how it works. Voluntary disclosure is about coming voluntarily, disclosing your tax affairs, and then you are able to pick it from there, and you only pay the principal tax minus the penalties and the interest. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you for watching. Thank you, our viewers and taxpayers. And in case you need any more information on this program, you can always check our web portal, you can always check our social media handles, and you can always contact us via the different toll-free numbers and also WhatsApp. This can be found on all our social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and the web portal as well. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye.